Let's put this on in a second. Are we ready, my friends? You see me online? You don't see me yet? Chabad.org. I think they see me. I'm not sure if they see me actually. Do you see me yet? If you're watching me on Chabad.org, please say hi. Oh, Art, I see you. Thank you for saying hi. You see me? Okay, so action time. Action, who can see me? I feel like it's a Purim. So, it doesn't work. Didn't get his attention. I think I'm hiding. Maybe we'll do it just like this. If you can hear me, if you can see me. This better? That's working? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think that's better. Because I can still see the screen. I'm not going to wear this the whole class because I'll go blind doing that. Okay. Ready, my friends? Let me just share this. Okay, so did you write something I didn't see? If you're watching, please say hi so I can actually see who's watching and not. That'd be great and awesome. Chat. Okay. I don't see any of the chat. Okay, so we're still struggling to find a platform for this, but okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So today was, I can't see who's here. Oh, Sarah. You came because I'm wearing them. Okay, I can take them off now. The glasses do the job. You came with the glasses. Okay, I can take the glasses off. It's highly discombobulating to have glasses on. So I have to tell you the truth. First of all, tonight's class is in memory of Yitzchak ben Yosef. I have such a good class with tonight. Really, I'm very excited about what I'm going to share with you tonight. Okay. I have the regular half, something very beautiful. With Rosh Chodesh Nisan, it's going to really take like two different ideas. It's going to be beautiful. But more people, Baruch Hashem. You see, look what a piece of paper can do. You see what a piece of paper can do. If you're watching on Chabad.org on our page, I can't see any of the chat. 10 papers and you need 20. You print 20, you only use 10. We can print more. You want to go here? You can share here. I don't need this. You can share. There you go. That's the spirit. That's the spirit. You can share. Exactly. You're married to the guy. You know what I'm saying? You share a lot more than the piece of paper, right? Yeah. Okay. Let's start, shall we? What? Yes. Hey, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'kol. So every time a different object that's gonna. Okay. So I just want to tell you the truth that these are actually not the glasses I was wearing earlier today. These are from Menucha. So my kids' school, they really went all out since the last week of appearing. So Menucha. I said, what's your name? One of my cute redhead kids who does very good. They actually in school they made this with the glasses that go inside it, and they learned all about the eyes and about watching it. And they had tours to go out to see the sun, so they all went out with these like glasses on like this. Now you all see what's going on. So that's how they went out to the sun. Now, if I would teach like that, I would like you would all leave. You know, like I'll finish my sermon, my rant. I'll take off my mask. Hey, where'd everyone go? Like, you know, what happened to the crowd? So I'm going to keep them off. But what? The masked rabbi. I feel like it's back on Purim. Yeah. But they're pretty cool, actually. Whichever Jew was selling these made a lot of money, I'm sure. I don't know. I didn't pay for them, so I don't know. But anyway, so on a serious note, you heard Benny Free singing today. Jews always have to find life lessons from everything that's taking place in the world. Everything taking place in our lives has to be, is meant to be, needs to be a inspiration for us, especially when the whole world is talking about something and excited about something. So there's obviously lessons for us from the solar eclipse, right? Now, I won't even ask if anyone has any ideas. Let's go straight to it. I'm sure you all know. One thing. I forgot the joke. So after I posted this picture this video on Facebook, so someone sent me such a wonderful joke. Even my daughter's grown, but I said I'm still going to share it. So how does someone take a haircut on the moon? Eclipse it. I told you guys would laugh. Eclipse it. Very good. You see, I should have that recorded. Definitely a dad joke. And I still said it live on Facebook. It's okay. So, eclipsing. Let's talk about the solar eclipse. And the real joke I wanted to start with is not really a joke. But it's a very famous. It's true, actually. It's not true, but it's true. There's a very, very famous video clip in Fiddler on the Roof. Right? One of the most famous. Fiddler on the Roof is very famous. All of it's famous. But one of the clips that, the standout moments is I asked the rabbi, tell us, is there a blessing for the czar? And the wise rabbi says very dramatically, yes, may the Lord keep the czar far, far away from us, right? So Jews have a blessing for everything. For everything. We have a blessing for everything. And by the way, that includes acts of nature. When you see thunder, there's a blessing. When you see lightning, there's a blessing. When you see a rainbow, there's a blessing. When you see a shooting star, there's a blessing. Also, my separation. There's a blessing for all of these amazing natural phenomena. There's a blessing. And yet today, we saw we saw the sun being covered by the moon. There was no blessing. If it would have been a blessing, we made a whole big community gathering. Come, we'll have serve food and whatever. And, but there's no blessing, so you got no food. Sorry. So why is there no blessing on a solar eclipse? It's an amazing phenomenon of the nature and the wonders of the universe. And for those that saw it, how many of you saw the solar eclipse today? Randy, Michelle, that's it? Stein? Wow, the majority didn't see it.
After it was video, I watched it.
After the video. I actually saw a video from someone in Dallas where it was complete, total, amazing video, actually. Outside, and I looked at it for a minute. I saw. Pretty cool. It is actually cool to see. It actually is cool. And yet there's no blessing. So why is there no blessing for something as amazing as seeing a solar eclipse? Stumped you, Randy, huh? Any thoughts?
Because it's so rare.
Because it's so rare is even more of a reason why we would do it. We actually have a blessing on the sun once every 28 years called the Birchas Hachama. When there's a solar, I forgot what it's called now. There are times that rare is not a bad thing. Yeah. So why no blessing on the solar eclipse? So let me ask you another question. Is a solar eclipse actually a good thing? What is the message? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it neutral? Is there something about nature that has nothing to do with us? So, thank God. What?
The darkness that brings for the moment.
The darkness for the moment is good or bad? The darkness.
Well, you figured that bringing darkness is bad or something.
Bringing darkness is not bad. We make a blessing on the darkness. By the way, I'll tell you something interesting. Do you know what the longest blessing is? In all of the blessings we say, do you know what the longest blessing is? Not the blessing. The bathroom is a half a page. Give me a siddur for a second. The longest. I'm back. The longest blessing that we say. What's the longest blessing? Anyone know? It's 2 pages long. Not the Kiddush Levana's club, but that's the actual blessing is not 2 pages, although you're close, I'll mention that. Is the blessing we say in the morning prayers called Yotzer HaMa'oros. It's the luminaries. The blessing begins on page 9. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, God, who forms light, Devorei Choshech, he creates darkness. And then for the next 2 pages, we describe how God's mercy gives light to the earth and to all those who dwell therein, and his goodness he renews continuously. It continues all the way until page 41. That's 2 pages later. We end up Baruch atah Adoshem Yotzer HaMa'oros. Blessed are you, God, who forms the luminaries. It's a 2-page blessing that we say every single morning about the sun, the moon, the luminaries. So we're not against making a blessing about the sun and the moon. We say when every single morning, including this morning, so long as blessing in the entire list of Jewish blessings, long as blessing. So why don't we make a blessing on this? So the truth is, that's why we have blessed to have the wisdom of the Talmud and the rabbis, and everything is in the Torah. And the rabbis of the Talmud tell us about the eclipse. So what do the rabbis in the Talmud tell us? I'm going to share my screen for those watching on my page, and those that are sitting here in the room. You can also look as well. And here you can see the text. Let me get full screen for a second. You can see exactly what the rabbis of the Talmud say. What do they say? So this is a quote from the Gemara and Talmud in Sukkah on Sukkah page 20. It says as follows: the sages taught, when the sun is eclipsed, simin ra l'chol ha'olam kulo. It is a bad omen. It's a negative sign for the world. And then they give an example. To what is this matter comparable? To a king of flesh and blood, who prepared a feast for his servants and placed a lantern before them to illuminate the hall. He became angry at them, and he said to his servant, take the lantern from before them and seat them in the darkness. Okay, that is a pretty sharp expression right there. So basically, oopsies. Let me just full screen 1 second. So basically, what the Talmud is saying here, when the sun is being blocked by the moon, the eclipse is a simin ra l'olam. It's a negative sign for the entire world. Why is it a negative sign? Because it's like God just dumped you in darkness. God said, you're having a party. Imagine you're misbehaving. I know a rabbi said it was like a party going on. The synagogue wasn't okay. And he pulled the lights. He pulled the lights. That's it. It's getting out of control. So when the world gets dark in the middle of the day, simin ra, it is a negative sign for the world. That's what the rabbis tell us. And then on that same page, the rabbis continue to tell us different reasons why a solar eclipse will come and bring this negativity into the world. So the sages taught, I'm continuing to read from the Gemara in Sukkah, that on account of 4 matters the sun is eclipsed. On account of a president of the Beis Din, the Av Beis Din, the head of the court, who dies and is not eulogized appropriately. So because he wasn't eulogized appropriately, so the heavens, so to say, are eulogizing him by making the world dark. On account of a betrothed young woman who screamed in the city that she was being raped, and there was no one there to rescue her. On account of homosexuality. On account of 2 brothers whose blood was spilled as one. They were both killed at the same time, or killed together. So because of these sins, that's what brings an eclipse into the world. And then the Gemara continues of another opinion of other sins that cause an eclipse of heavenly lights. I don't know if that's only the moon, if that's both together, on account of fraudulent documents, on account of testifiers of false testimony, on account of raisers of small domesticated animals who take the land of Israel, instead of using it to inhabit the land and build homes, use it for animals, on account of people who chop good fruit-producing trees for wood instead of letting the trees produce fruit. The point is, we don't need to get into the list of sins. The point is, the rabbis are telling us, you know why an eclipse comes? Because of sins that people do. And therefore, the eclipse is actually a simin ra l'olam. It is a negative sign for the world, a time of punishment, a time where God is, so to say, throwing the world into darkness, removing the lantern that was lighting up the hall, turning off, hitting, cutting the power, ending the party. God is angry. Sounds pretty negative, which is why we have no blessing for a solar eclipse, because it's not a happy occasion. It's not something to celebrate. Now, that sounds pretty harsh, but I'm going to ask you a very simple question that was going to make us have to stop and really think deeply. As a slightly heretical question, but it's okay. We can talk honestly here. The fact that there was a solar eclipse today, is that an unnatural spiritual phenomenon that came as a result of behavior of people in the world? Or is that a predetermined natural phenomena that is guaranteed to happen on a certain day? And we already know now the next solar eclipse is going to be in the year 2044, in 20 years from now. We already know exactly the day and the time when the solar eclipse will be. So if in 2044, rabbis come and say, oh, you know why there's a solar eclipse happening? Because last week you guys were misbehaving, and you guys are forging documents, and you were talking during the sermon or whatever. Sorry, guy. There's 20 years ago, this was already scheduled. The pre-planned, we call it pre-planned party, but it's not like something that only happens if we're behaving good or not good. A solar eclipse is something which is a natural reoccurring phenomena that takes place from time to time, and it's fixed. It doesn't come because of our behavior. And in fact, some people, as the Rebbe explained, would like to use this statement as proof that not everything that the rabbis say in the Talmud is authentic or correct. What's the proof here? I have a statement where the rabbis who are seemingly in today's enlightened mind, seemingly were uneducated to the natural realities of the orbit and of the sun and the moon, and therefore they mistakenly thought that the only reason why this darkness is coming in the middle of the day is as a result of sins of people in the world. So they, with superstition, they decided that it's a sign of sins, and therefore the negativity in the world, and therefore don't make a blessing. But really they were uneducated, they didn't know the truth, but not everything in the Talmud is correct. That is the argument some would say based on the statement of the Talmud we just read together. But of course, that's a very uninformed argument, because the rabbis of the Talmud were very aware of astronomy, very aware of science. This is a well-documented fact. At the times of the Mishnah, the Talmud for sure was long after the telescope, and long after there was clearly documented knowledge of the orbit of the sun and the moon and of eclipses. So the rabbis of the Talmud absolutely knew what a solar eclipse was. Now, by the way, as far as Jewish tradition is concerned, Jews have been astrologers since day one, since Avraham Avinu. Abraham was an astrologer. Avraham Avinu actually, now I'm not going to go there now, but how did Avraham Avinu become a Jew? How did he discover God? By watching the orbit of the sun and the moon and the stars and the clouds. That was what made him realize that there's a greater power that's controlling the forces of nature. And it's known in Judaism and Jewish tradition, it is an accepted fact that Avram was aware of the stars, he was aware of the astrology, he knew that he was not astrologically destined to have children, which is why God tells him, go out of the stars, count the stars. So as far as we're concerned, Jews have been astrologers from the beginning. Not only that, mitzvah to know how to count the cycles of the moon, because tonight's Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Nisan, and the very first mitzvah that God ever gave the Jewish people was to count the months based on the moon. I'm going to talk about this mitzvah a little bit later. God says, count the month. And so it is an absolutely clear idea that Jews were always keeping track of the cycle of the moon and knew the orbit of the moon. But even if you want to be a little heretical, you don't want to accept the Jewish traditions, to say that the Jews, the rabbis, and the secular non-Jewish philosophers and astrologers of the time were definitely in contact. There's many documented debates between rabbis and non-Jewish intellectuals. And the world wasn't a secret at that time. You're going back to the time of the Talmud, 1,500 years ago, whatever it is, 1,000 years ago, people knew this information. So to say that the rabbis in the Talmud didn't know what a solar eclipse is historically, factually incorrect. So it can't be that they didn't know that a solar eclipse is a natural phenomenon. Which then brings us back to our question, how could the rabbis say that the eclipse is a simin ra la'olam, that it's a negative sign for the universe, it's a sign of negativity, a sign of danger, etc., when in fact it's something that they themselves knew is a predetermined fact of nature that's going to happen every single cycle, regardless of what people in the world will or will not do. Good question? Okay. So there's a simple answer. Everything I'm saying now, the Rebbe talks about this. There's a simple answer, which is that the simin ra, the negative sign for the world, the sign of wake-up call, so to say, where we should feel threatened, we should feel awakened, that God is looking at us and God is unhappy with our behavior, is not when the eclipse happens. The eclipse happening is a part of nature. But it's when the eclipse happens where we can see it. So if you look at the language of the Talmud, it's when we see the eclipse. Meaning, the eclipse could have happened today over the Atlantic Ocean. The eclipse would have happened in the middle of the ocean. Would we all be talking about it? No. No, maybe some real hard science lovers would have gone to a boat to go see the eclipse. But the majority of us, my kids in school would not have made these glasses, and if they didn't make it, they sent out a whole email last week to talk to your kids about it. That's what got me. I first knew about it because my kids' school sent out an email about it. And all the kids, I don't know about the public school, but now my kids go to school, every kid had glasses and they went out. It was like a whole thing. Yeah, a whole geschäft. They had a class about it. So I'm saying now my father shared with him the older classes. So if it happened over the Atlantic Ocean, we wouldn't be talking about it now. It could happen on a day which would be very cloudy and you wouldn't be able to see anything. Just because the sun and the moon cross paths doesn't mean that the sky will be clear and we can see. It could be like a rainy day. So when the fact that the solar eclipse happens, that's an act of nature. The fact that we can see it, that's because God is sending us a sign. Okay, that's a simple, clean answer, and you have no contradiction anymore. The rabbis understand that nature is nature, but the fact that we see that phenomena is meant to be a wake-up call to us to be more introspective in our behavior and how we're doing if we're behaving and conducting ourselves the right way. But we can go further than that. We won't be satisfied with that answer, although it's a clean answer. We won't be satisfied. The fact that nature happens is what we call mazel, right? What is mazel? Mazel tov. What does the word mazel tov mean? What? So mazel tov is translated in English as congratulations, but that's not what it actually means. Luck. Mazel is a star, a constellation, and tov is good. So the word mazel tov, when you wish someone mazel tov, you see the comments over here. Hello, everyone that's watching from all over the world. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Okay. So the word mazel tov literally means a good mazel, a good constellation, or a good omen, a good star, if you will. Now, the word mazel in Hebrew is also connected to the word nozel, to drip, to flow down, to drip. Have you ever been to a hospital? So you go and get an IV, right? And there's a drip, right? And whatever fluids they're giving you is dripping down, drip by drip. And this is a very important idea in Judaism, which we're going to just touch on, not too deeply, but we'll touch on for a few minutes. How does God give his divine energy, his divine beneficence to the universe? He drips it down through his messengers, through his intermediaries that are the forces of nature. So God wants to give us food. And the food we have comes from God. But it doesn't come direct from God via express mail. A little package from God has arrived at your front doorstep. That was the times of Man. The bread from heaven was like that. But today, God created a very complex ecological, natural system of rain and sun and planting and harvesting and growing and shipping and trucks and bakeries and factories and eventually get the food we need to eat. There's a whole system in play. And if we had the time, if we were inclined to do so, you could look at all the different forces of nature that need to come into play to make the food that we eat come, the different times, the different forces of gravity, and eventually we get our food. These vehicles, these tools of nature that God uses to bring light and life and food and everything to the world are called his mazoles, his constellations, and they're in constant orbit and in constant movement because they are nasal, they are dripping down flows of divine energy into the world. That's the way it works. So now, nozel is to drip. The same root word. Nozel, to drip. So a mazel, which are the stars, a constellation, God's way of dripping into the world to give us life on the way that we can handle it. If the doctor would just pour a whole liter of fluid or of IV antibiotics, just pump it in a thing, it could kill the person. It's too much. It takes an hour, but this way you'll get a way that can become part of your bloodstream and enter into the bloodstream in a healthy way that your body can absorb the antibiotic. You can't just dump the whole thing in one shot. It's just too intense. So God did the same thing. God's energy can't just be pumped into the world like sometimes that's a miracle. It's a splitting of the sea. But normally it comes drip by drip by drip by drip in a way that it can be internalized into our consciousness, into our human bloodstream. So, we know that there's many things that are connected to these mazalis, to these constellations. There's good days, there's bad days, there's good hours, bad hours, bloody hours. One of the famous examples is that many people have the custom not to make kiddush on Friday night on red wine or on wine in the 6th hour. The 6th hour on Friday is the mazel of blood, of March, if I'm not mistaken, which is the mazel of blood. It's considered a bloody time. And so to make kiddush on red wine in the hour of the constellation of blood will give extra energy to this force. And that's why many religious Jews don't make kiddush during that hour. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. There are people that don't start a new project on Wednesday. Wednesday, they don't move to a house on Wednesday, right, Vivi? They're careful. Wednesday is considered a negative day because Wednesday is the day of the Monday and Wednesday. There's negative mazal that's associated with that day. They're not, people don't get married on the Wednesday, they get married on the Tuesday, etc. like that. There's many, many examples of things we don't, to chase away mazales, shalamales, many things. Mazales, and again, I've done the classes in the past, but I have a whole other section of idea I want to talk about. In short, mazales and the focus or the concern of these forces of nature are real. And therefore, we know that when a person is born, there's the time that his birthday is celebrated. Why? Mazale Gaiver. The mazel of that person is stronger on your birthday. The constellation, the alignment of whatever celestial stars were in force are shining at that moment. So the question is, when a person has a certain tendency, a certain natural instinctive behavior, which could be a result of the mazel in which he was born. And we know that there's all kinds of different mazels, a mazel to be bloody, a mazel to be rich, a mazel to be beautiful, a mazel. Some people are born with a natural tendency to be charismatic, to be beautiful. And they're all described. The Gemara has a whole page describing different mazels of the different days of the week. The person is born on this day, it's a sign that he'll be successful, he'll be smart. The person born on this day, it's a sign he'll struggle. You know what a shlemazel is, by the way? What's a shlemazel? Shlemazel. What's a shlemazel? Shalom mazal. Well, it's translated in Yiddish. It means he has no luck. That's the guy that he buys. I don't know. He buys Apple. They come to, I don't know. He's the guy that everything will go wrong. Go wrong. He has no luck. Shalom mazel. He has no mazel. Can we get this word shalom mazel? Like combine it to one. He just likes to combine multiple words. Shalom mazel. He's a shalom mazel. He has no mazel. So it's a struggle. So what do we tell a person that struggles? He has no mazel. So again, I'm taking a very important idea, and here's a crux of it. The Gemara tells us that when God told Avram go out of the stars, at that moment God created a reality that Ein Mazel Yisrael, that Jews are not limited to or controlled by these constellations. They exist, they're real, they're forces of God's power and forces of God's nature, but they're not things that have any control over a Jew. And the Gemara has a bunch of stories that bring across this idea. The most famous one is Rabbi Akiva's daughter. Famous story, the beautiful story. Rabbi Akiva, the famous Rabbi Akiva, had a daughter. And on the day that his daughter was born, he was walking in the marketplace, and there was an astrologer there, a stargazer. And he says to Rabbi Akiva, Mazel Tov. Or I don't say Mazel, actually it's Mazel Tov. It wasn't a good Mazel. He said, Mazel Ra. I don't know if he said it either. He said, I see you had a baby. You should know, I see in the stars that your daughter that was just born is destined to die on the night of her wedding. That's pretty harsh. But these people were professionals. They got paid big money. Not like today we have a weather people that they don't have to be right to keep their job. Back then they had a higher standard of excellence. If you gave predictions in the stars and your predictions didn't come true, you were fired. They found someone else. They really knew how to read the signs in the stars. It was a real science that was a real thing. So, and these people were known to be accurate. And Rabbi Akiva didn't tell anyone about this. So he's going to go home and tell his wife, good news! The stargazer just told me our daughter will die the day of her wedding. So he kept it in his heart. He didn't share it with anybody. Anyway, she gets engaged, comes the night of her wedding, and everyone's celebrating. He's like, comes in the morning, and all of a sudden he hears a shriek from his daughter's room. He runs to the room, and he sees her behind her bed where she was sleeping. There was like a crack in the wall. Like today, a nice sheetrock, everything is smooth and plastered. There were bricks, stones. And she had this big brooch, a big pin in her hair, and she took it out of her hair. It was dark in the room, and she put it into the crack between the two bricks where it stayed like in the wall. And unbeknownst to her, there was a poisonous snake in the bricks right over her pillow, waiting. And when she put the pin into the wall, unknowingly she killed the snake. She pinned the snake to the wall, and now she wakes up in the morning, she takes the pin out. She's a dead snake right over her head, stuck into the wall, right over your pillow. Very romantic to wake up to on your wedding day, like, good morning. Ah! We'll see what kind of man he is, how brave he is. So Rabbi Akiva says to her, you should know that this snake had come to kill you. In the stars, you were destined to die last night, and this snake was a messenger that was coming to kill you. What did you do yesterday that you merited life? And she said, I was by the wedding, everyone was dancing, and there was a custom, still is a custom. At a wedding, you have a table for all the poor people. Anyone that's hungry and has food, come and eat. Till today, you go to a wedding and a religious wedding, the space set up for poor people. And I saw someone came in, the table was already full, there was no more food left. So I went and I gave this poor person my plate of food. And she didn't eat on her own wedding night, she didn't eat, she gave her food to this beggar. Akiva said from here, stuck a tatzal maves, giving charity saves from death, but you're giving this poor man food that saved your life. Similar to that, a similar story is with a stargazer that saw a bunch of wood choppers going out to chop wood. And he said, that guy, not you, whatever that guy, he's not going to come back from the forest. He's going to die in the forest. I see he's walking. There's death over his head. And at the end of the day, they all come back, including this guy. She said, you're wrong. Look, he's still alive. So how could that be? He walks over to him. She says, open up your bundle of logs that you're carrying. He opened up the bundle of logs. And there between the logs was also a dead snake. Or a dead scorpion, maybe, I think it was. Dead scorpion. It was crushed between the logs of wood. So he asks him, what did you do today? So he said, when we were giving out the food we were eating, I saw one guy didn't have any food to eat. I gave him my food. And as a result of that, he was saved. Meaning, yes, there's a mazel, but ain't mazel Yisrael. Jews are not limited to, we're not controlled, and we're not defined by the mazel that exists. We're not defined by the mazel that exists. And therefore, if there's a negative in there is a negative energy, there is a time. So let's go back now to the eclipse. A solar eclipse means that in the natural orbit of the universe, in the natural sequence of events that God made, there's good times and negative times. And God created a time when there'll be a force of punishment in the world for sins. And the force of punishment is meant to be a wake-up call to us. It's meant to be a reminder to if you sin, that you need to fix yourself. However, that simin ra is not for a Jew that has a mazel Yisrael. And in fact, it's the Gemara after, I didn't quote a little bit later, the Gemara actually differentiates between a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse. So the solar eclipse is a bad sign for the nations. They should be worried about it because the Jews are compared to the moon and the non-Jews are compared to the sun. Actually, I should have copied it. It was later. The moon, the non-Jews are compared to the sun. There's a verse that proves that. And the Jews are compared to the moon. So when the sun is being eclipsed by the moon, it's a bad sign. And the nation should worry about it. And when it's an eclipse of the moon, a lunar eclipse, that's a bad sign that punishment is coming on to the Jewish people. But it doesn't say the Jews should worry about it. The non-Jews say they should worry because Eid Mazel Yisrael. So it's a wake-up sign. It's a wake-up sign, but it's not that we're destined to get punished now. It's not a negativity that, what are we going to do? It's a negative day that there's a solar eclipse and the world turned dark and we're in trouble. Jews are not limited by these forces. And because we're not limited by these forces, that's why the rabbis told us, don't ignore the sign. Don't ignore it. Recognize that God is still sending you a message. Just like, for example, a rainbow. What's a rainbow? A rainbow is a beautiful, beautiful act of nature. And it's a very beautiful way of explaining that the light is reflected in the prism in the water. But as a Jew, we know what is a rainbow? It's a sign to God that just like you, the people by the flood sinned and they were worthy of being destroyed, so too now you're doing sins. And really, really, you're worthy of destruction. But I promised Noah not to bring a flood to the world, so I'm not going to destroy you, but just wanted to remind you. So we're not limited to the mazel. We're not confined or defined by this negativity that exists in the world at the time of a solar eclipse. And so therefore, it's not a contradiction. The rabbis know that there's a natural phenomena that the sun goes on its orbit and the moon goes on its orbit. And the rabbis could also do the same mathematical calculations and figure out that in 2044 will be another solar eclipse. That's natural. A Jew is not defined by that. But nevertheless, a Jew needs to learn from that. And that's what the rabbis are telling the Jews, that when they see this, you should know that in the world there's a negativity now. There's a negative mazel now. It's a natural thing, a mazel. It's a negative time. And even though you're not stuck to that, you have to wake up and be cognizant, to be reminded of the fact that your behavior has consequences and you need to behave properly. Got it? Is that clear? Okay. So we've addressed why there's no blessing on the solar eclipse. Because it's not a happy occasion to see a solar eclipse. In fact, the sun getting dark is a sign that God threw the lantern out. By the way, the example I should point out is very precise. Notice if you look at the words of the Talmud, what does the Talmud say? That he gives an example. A solar eclipse is compared to a king who prepared a feast for his servants and placed a lantern before them to illuminate the hall. Then what happened? He became angry, and what did he do? No, he didn't take it away. Be careful. Be exact in the words. The king didn't take away the light. The king said to his servant, take away the light. That one word he says to his servant is a whole message for us. God himself is not making the world dark. The servants of God, the sun, the moon, the natural orbits, the natural constellations, they are the servants of God. They're acting on the message, on the instruction of God, that God predetermined that they're going to cross paths on this and this time and this in this place. We are not limited to that. That's just the servant doing it. But the rabbis are still telling us it's a wake-up call. It's a reminder to us to be a little bit more introspective into our behavior, to be a little more introspective into how we're doing, to make sure that we're worthy of God's light and not worthy of God's turning the lights off on us, so to say. Okay? This is a classic Jewish from the Talmud on how to see a solar eclipse without the negativity, because we're not limited to the mazel, but that is a classic understanding in Judaism of a solar eclipse. Now I want to show you something very, very beautiful. Actually, I want to just read before that wasn't beautiful. I want one more verse. If you look in Genesis, chapter number 1, because it's still about what I said before. Look in the very, very beginning of creation, in Genesis, when God created the lights in the sky. So God said, let there be luminaries. Chapter 1, verse 15, God said, let there be luminaries in the expanse of the heavens to separate between the day and then between the night. What does that mean? They shall be signs, and for holidays, and for the years, and for the months, and for the days. So the holidays, we understand, we count the holidays by the moon, the years, all of that, the days, the years are counted by the sun and the moon. What's the signs? The Torah is telling us in the very beginning of creation, Genesis, day number 4, that one of the functions of the luminaries in the sky is to serve as a sign. What is a sign? So Rashi in Genesis tells us that when the luminaries are eclipsed, it is an unfavorable omen for the world. It's an unfavorable omen. As we read the Gemara. As it says, now listen to the verse. This is new. Jeremiah says that from the signs of the heavens be not dismayed. This is talking, the prophet is telling the Jews, the signs of the heavens, the sign of the heaven is that the stars and the sun and the moon are crossing paths and the world got dark in the middle of the day. Nevertheless, Jeremiah says, do not be dismayed, because when you perform the will of He, you need not fear retribution. You don't need to be afraid of punishment. Okay? That's also true for non-Jews. They also, but it's a little bit different. They also can overcome the mazal, but it's a little bit harder. But for a Jew especially, we have to know that when you do the will of God, you don't need to be afraid of any punishment. So this is an oath. It's a sign. It's a reminder that there could be punishment, like a rainbow. There could be punishment. Do the right thing. Got it? Based on that, the Chassam Sofer is a beautiful Chassam Sofer that an eclipse is actually a sign of redemption, because when the person is reminded that God can punish him, makes him humble. It is teshuvah. When there's teshuvah, that makes redemption come to the world, because now it's like a wake-up call to us. It makes it be better. Okay. I want to share with you something now, very, very powerful. I got the actually, I have to give credit to my father-in-law, who's whatever, and I thought of something after he's speaking to me. I thought of something that blew my mind. I want to share with you. Tonight is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Right now, it's Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Rosh Chodesh Nisan is a very, very special day. It's the beginning of the month of redemption, the month of Geula, the month of redemption. But also Rosh Chodesh Nisan is the first mitzvah the Jews ever received from God. When we were in the desert, when we were in Egypt, still as slaves, the first commandment that we formally received from God as a nation, I mean, Abraham was told to have a bris, etc., but that was an individual command. The first time that God tells a nation, I'm giving you a mitzvah, was today. Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And God comes to Moshe in the desert, in Egypt. He says to him the following words, very famous words. HaChodesh hazeh lachem Rosh Chodashim. This month shall be to you the head of the months. Rishon hu lachem. The Chadshei Hashan will be the beginning of all the months of the year. That's why in the Torah, the beginning of the year is now. Today is Rosh Hashanah of the biblical year. Even though we celebrate Rosh Hashanah when the physical world was created in the month of Tishrei, but as far as the senses, as far as the Torah counts the months, when the Jews began their identity as a nation, when the purpose of creation was fulfilled, today, right now, as it's getting dark outside, is the real Rosh Hashanah of the world. Of the Jewish people, of the Jewish people. Now, there's a question. The words say, God says to Moshe, HaChodesh hazeh lachem. This month shall be to you the head of the month. Simply, what does it mean, this month? The month of Nisan, the month he was referring to. And yet, Rashi says a very famous statement. Moshe didn't understand what God meant. God was telling Moshe how to be what's called Mekadesh Chodesh, how to sanctify a new moon. So there's something called Kiddush HaChodesh. In the times of the temple, when there was a court in the Sanhedrin, every month, I have a set calendar like today. Today, we already know, I can tell you now when next month or after, it's already predetermined in the calendar. But in temple times, there was no set calendar. Witnesses will come to the court, and they would have to testify that they saw the new moon being born. When you first see the first glimmer, the first sliver of a new moon, and there was and the rabbis of the court were expert astrologers, astronomers rather, they knew exactly where the moon should be. They knew where it should be, meaning even though they could have figured out using simple calculations when the moon would be born and where it would be in the sky, in which location, they had to have witnesses come, and they knew. And they would ask the witnesses, where did you see it? Was it high? Was it low? Was it on this side, the east, or the west? And they knew. And they would actually put on the wall, like I said, the Mishnah describes, they put on the wall like different pictures of how it looked and how high it was. And they could tell if the person was saying the truth or not saying the truth because they knew where it should be. The guy said, I saw it was really high. It was on the east side, and then it should be on the west side. They knew exactly where they were standing in the mountains. They knew where the moon would be visible. So anyway, so God is exposing these laws of how to sanctify a new moon. And the Talmud tells us this is one of 3 times where Moshe could not understand what God was saying. Moshe couldn't understand what God was saying. Couldn't understand. What does it mean? How do you do it? He didn't understand the size. So Rashi tells us, it's not Rashi, it's the Gemara. If you look at the very bottom of the text that I gave you, it says as follows. This, Moses, the word this, hazeh, what does this mean? You say this when you're pointing at something, right? I say, This siddur, this is the one that I'm holding. This in my hand. So that's the siddur. Say that. So when God says to Moshe, "Hachodesh hazeh lachem," this month shall be for you a new month. Have found difficulty determining how to do the renewal of the new moon, in what size it should appear before it is fit for being sanctified as a new month. So God showed with his finger the moon in the sky and said to him, he must see a moon like this and sanctify the month. God had to show him physically. It's Rosh Chodesh night, and God had to show him what a small, little, brand new moon looks like to explain to him the idea of a new birth of a new moon. What does that mean? Moshe could understand. There's answers. But I'm going to show you an answer I thought of tonight based on the following. We know, I already mentioned before, and I should have copied that piece of Gemara too, just in the front of the page, whatever, that the Jews are compared to the moon. It's a very well-known idea in Jewish tradition. The Jewish people are compared to the moon. And the non-Jews are compared to the sun. They shine, right? They're the ones that are shining, they're bright, they're powerful, they're illuminated. You look at them, they look so powerful. And the Jews are like the moon. Why are Jews compared to the moon? Anyone know why are we compared to the moon? So Robert, I'll give you a hint. Robert before mentioned the Kiddush Levana prayer. We say a prayer once a month, preferably it's Saturday night, but once a month we make a blessing to sanctify the new moon. Just the regular Kiddush Levana. And in the blessing we make, I'm reading it right now from the Siddur. So we say, Baruch Atah Hashem, we bless you, how we are glad to celebrate the moon. And then we say like this follows. And he directed the moon. Sorry, that's not what I'm looking for. The Jews are compared. Here. So we are compared to the moon. Who are likewise destined to be renewed and to glorify. What's the story of the moon? Every single month, the moon gets bigger and bigger, more beautiful. What happens? It starts to get diminished and diminished until it reaches its zenith. It reaches a point where it seems like it's disappeared. It seems like the moon has lost any visibility, any credibility. The moon is no longer a force in the universe. And then what happens? A new moon comes again. Praise God for this miracle of the moon, that God says to the moon to be born again, to have a new birth. And every month, the moon goes through a new birth. And therefore, the Jews praise the moon. The Jews are compared to the moon, because just like the moon waxes and wanes, has its highs and its lows, the Jews also go through periods of highs and lows. Of highs, when we're shining, when we feel like we're secure, when we feel like we're on top of the world, our light is being appreciated by everyone on earth below. Times that we feel like we've disappeared. We feel like we've lost all credibility. We feel like the whole world is against us. We feel like everyone is ganging up against the Jewish people, and we feel like nothing. And yet we are compared to the moon because the moon continues to come back. Do you know what happened today? How big is the moon? It's like 867 square miles, something like that. I forgot that I saw it before. If I'm not mistaken, I have the numbers correct. I'm not a scientist. The Earth is 40 times bigger than the moon. Is that correct? For the Earth is 40 times bigger than the moon. The sun is 660 times bigger than the Earth. Or 167 times bigger. So how much bigger is the sun over the moon? I don't know. Hugely different. How powerful is the sun? It's huge. How powerful is the moon? And what happened today? Today, the moon blocked the sun. And today, the whole world went to stop and to see how the moon, that is sometimes crushed so low, at the end of the day, has the power to overpower the sun. to overpower the sun. And that, my friends, I think is the story of the Jewish people and why Moshe didn't understand. God tells Moshe at the birth of the Jewish people, we're enslaved. We're at the very bottom of our existence. The Jews in Egypt were a crushed nation. We were crushed. We have been terrorized. We have been brutalized. We have been victim. We've been tortured, enslaved, everything for 80 years of suffering, 210 years in Egypt. And now God says to Moshe, you are like the moon. You're going to be reborn. God says to the moon to be born again. And Moshe, okay, fine. But by the way, the moon doesn't just stay big forever. The moon gets small again, and then you have to do a new Kiddush HaChodesh. Every month, God says to Moshe, you're going to do this again. Every month, you're going to look in the darkness, and you're going to see a little sliver of light, and you're going to see the moon coming back. And Moshe says, how does that make sense? How could the Jews come back as a nation after we're crushed? After a Holocaust, how could the Jews come back? After October 7th, how could we come back? When we get crushed so low, when the nations seem to overpower us, how is it possible? How can you logically explain to me, God, how this works, that the Jews can always come back no matter how big the threats are against us? And what does God answer? He can't. There is no answer. There's no words logically that God can show Moshe, explain to Moshe why it is as it is. All God can do is point with his finger and say, Zeh. HaChodesh hazeh lochem. This is, I am creating the universe. This is the reality. God is telling Moshe something that transcends explanation. Something that even God can explain. But he shows Moshe it's a fact. The Jewish people that you're out of Egypt right now are crushed, and they're starting a new period. They're going to grow, but then they're going to be crushed again. And they're going to grow again. And they're going to be crushed again. And they're going to grow again. And there will come a day when the entire world will recognize that this little moon, these tiny little people that have suffered so much for so many years, are actually more powerful than the sun. There's going to come a day when the whole world, every single person, is going to stop their day to put on glasses and to look and say, wow, the Jewish people, they're a tiny moon. They were crushed 6 months ago. They were on the bottom. They were tortured. They were killed. They were raped. They were murdered. They were brutalized. We were on the bottom. We were dark. But that darkness is not forever. That darkness doesn't stay. The moon doesn't stay dark. The moon comes back. And the day is coming. We're entering tonight. Tonight is the day that God said to Moshe 3,300 and something years ago. That the Jewish people will be like the moon, HaChodesh Hazeh. And the word Chodesh is from the word Chidush, to like become new. Brand new. And that you will be my people and that you will celebrate redemption. And just like that month, all those years ago was the first time that God took us out of Egypt. And that was a month that God showed us that we are, no matter how low we were his people. That he would redeem us. God told us then that the month of Nisan is the month of redemption. The month of Nisan is the time. Like the days that I took you out of Egypt, I will show you even more wondrous miracles, even greater salvation, even greater miracles. Miracles so great, they're going to make the miracles of the Exodus pale in comparison. And today, I think, could not be a more appropriate time. As we enter into Rosh Chodesh Nisan, we enter into the month when God promises us is a month of redemption. It's a month that God is setting up the world. We just were crushed so bad. We were so down. The Jewish people suffered such darkness this year. Such darkness. The moon felt like it disappeared. And what happened after we were crushed? We came together and we got brighter and brighter and stronger until we reached a point where the whole world saw how the moon is more powerful than the sun. That, my friends, is Mashiach. And tonight, as we enter into the month of redemption and the month of miracles, we have to believe with all of our heart and souls that this month Mashiach is coming. Finally, it's time for the world to recognize that that little moon that everyone's been ignoring, They've been looking at the sun. That sun, for all of its brightness, is nothing in comparison to the moon, because the moon has God. And how do you explain it? You can't. You don't need to. Like Moshe, God showed him, and just like God showed Moshe miracles then, and just like the Jews at Kriyas Yamsuf said, Zeh Keli, this is my God, and I will sanctify him. God willing, tonight once again, should be the beginning of the month, the final month, the month of redemption. Beginning, it says, the Rosh Hashanah of the Jewish people. Tonight will be the Rosh Hashanah of the end of Galus, the end of exile, and finally, once and for all, the moon will block the sun. The Jewish people that are compared to the moon will once again fill the world. The whole nation, the whole world will see God's people are his chosen people, and will be able to go back to Israel in peace and happiness with Mashiach, God willing, very, very soon. Amen. Amen. Okay. That is the story, my friends. It's real. I feel it. I feel it. That's it. It like hit me. We're the moon, and we're blocking the sun. Once and for all. Okay, thank you. I don't see any of the comments here on Facebook. I see Chabad.org, all the comments. I hope you enjoyed. Let me go open up another Facebook so I can see my personal pages. God bless you all. Next week, same time, same place. And by the way, I think I may continue this theme next week's class. If in Yerushalayim, in Israel, with Mashiach, I already have an idea of how everything I said is connected to Pesach also. There's everything about the Ein Mazel Yisrael. So next week will be a Pesach class, and we'll continue already continue right where we left off with the same. Okay. There's more. Well, the more is Mashiach. That's the more. The more is that the moon shouldn't wane anymore. It's just once and for all. That's the story. Okay. Okay, my friends. What? Yes, Bezrat Hashem. There's no garbage. My friend Laila Tov. Yeah, and this is nothing. It's right down. Yeah. Okay. God bless you. Thank you. I'm just looking at all the comments. Toda Vivi, I appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, Kael, and thank you, Carmen, and thank you, Art, and thank you, everyone else. Appreciate the kind words. My Facebook page will say thank you to everyone that's watching over here as well. Thank you. God bless you all. Laila Tov.